acknowledge the blessing that we're here. Like we're complaining that it's hot, but we get a chance to enjoy it. That's a blessing in itself. But we also want to pay homage to the indigenous people that first inhabited this land. I want to invite up Chief Eagle Elk. He has a powerful message for us, so he's going to open up our event. Welcome, Chief Eagle Elk.
Thank you, sir. All right. Greetings, everyone. All right, there we go. First, I want to give you a greetings. Danake, Trashkena, Wakane, Skorure, Disney, Yespika Manu, Agisere Uchira, Yagasi, Stokuya Chufurufa, Bakti with the boy, Wagawane. Basically, what I did was just introduce myself. Greetings, Chwent Tanake, Shkenahe. Greetings to everyone. I am Lavelle Eagle Elk, Bear Clan, and I am from the Cape Fear region, also known as Dai Chikora, or Chikora Dai, the land of Chikora. So, like I said, we are Cape Fear Indians. We are Skorure and Wokan. We are Tuscarora people, to make it simple. You see Cape Fear Indian signs on Dawson Street, Worcester Street. Those signs are referencing us. I stand before you to affirm that this is traditional land of the Tuscarora peoples, my people, who are the original stewards of this land we call the Cape Fear, and we will continue to be a vital part of the community. I pay my respects to my Tuscarora elders, past, present, and future, and honor their enduring relationship to this land. The Tuscarora are one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy. And the Tuscarora are still here, alive, well, and living in North Carolina. The Tuscarora have a rich and vibrant culture that has been passed down for generations. The Tuscarora peoples are known for their resilience, as well as their commitment to community, and for having a deep respect of the natural world. When I say the natural world, we may say Wakan, or Utira Wakan. Basically, Wakan is another way of saying life force. The same way if you were listening to a guru from India saying prana in yoga, or if you was taking some kind of martial arts class from the Chinese who would say chi, or if you were taking Aikido, martial arts from Japan, called ki. Same thing, we're talking about the life force, the spirit that envelops all of us. I am grateful for our ancestors who fought for us and endured extreme hardships in order for us to be able to live and work on Tuscarora land today. And I am committed to supporting my living Tuscarora relatives in our culture. An elder in the Tuscarora community who is my blood cousin told me to speak the language every time there's an opportunity to speak. I've heard this said by other Haudenosaunee leaders. I've heard this from their elders of the Iroquois Confederacy that you may know them as. And I've even heard our Lakota elders also say this. Why are all the elders and leadership and people across Indigenous America speaking about the importance of our language? Well, number one, because it's ours. It's ours, and number two, it's important. Why is it important? I get there. Number three, it's a must. Why is it important and why is it a must? Because of number four, to keep it alive. Number five, we speak to Creator and honor our ancestors in our language. We keep them alive. Number six, because we participate in ceremonies in our language. It is the language of ceremony, which keeps it alive. and keeps our ancestors alive. Last but not least, number 7. More anuture hapakti wagayas nariske. Number 7 is because we're still here and we're stronger together, is what I just said. I am a direct descendant of a few Tuscarora chiefs. Chief Billy Mitchell and his son John, who moved from Indian Woods Reservation in Bertie County to Bladen County and established an area, a region called Mitchellfield. We have a Mitchellfield cemetery there today. That region was where Chief Mitchell, through his son John, came and settled. Also Tuscarora chiefs Samuel and Isaac Jacobs, who through a later leader in the community, Shadrach Jacobs, owned land in Bladen County, an entire area around the Buckhead area now. Also another leader and grandfather is Abraham Freeman Sr., who through his children Bruce and Alexander and others, he had a lot of children, owned land from Freeman Beach all the way to Bladen, Columbus County. The whole Carolina Beach area. If you go to Seabreeze, or if you Google it, you'll still see Freeman Beach popping up on your Google, named after our family. And we still have a lot of families there now, slowly being pushed out. My kinship is undeniable. Let me say that again. My kinship is undeniable. From Chiefs Taylor, Chief John Freeman of Chowan, people who are taking DNA tests and connecting back to those areas are contacting me, hey, we're cousins. I already know this. I'm glad other folks are finding this out too, and not afraid to admit it. The Machupunga of Piney Woods are my cousins, and I'm closely related to Squahawke, which is the Tuscarora word for Martin County, which is close to Bertie County, Indian Woods Reservation. This is the county where some of my mother's, my matrilineal side, migrated down to Columbus County, and now it's a historical black community there called Cherry Town, where those cherries migrated from down here. Machupunga territory, those are my family. One of my great uncles, William Luther Moore, the brother of my 4th great grandfather, George Edward Moore. William Luther is the primary person who established what's known today as Pembroke University. It's my 4th great uncle. William Luther Moore, my apologies, is my 3rd great uncle, and he is the brother of my 3rd great grandfather, George Moore. There are more notable family members I could mention. Unfortunately, many indigenous communities demand blood quantum and pedigree. I ask you today, bear me witness, everyone, that after everything that I've shared, rich in family and undeniable in my ancestry, am I not here in the living flesh, or am I invisible? In many instances, we're made to feel invisible. I will share a little bit on that a little later. I mention all of this not to be boastful or to seek out controversy. I'm simply stating my reality. As indigenous peoples, we're always questioned about our heritage, our lineage, if you're a real Indian. We indigenous peoples, especially those of darker complexions, are the only people who have to prove our lineage and our pedigree the same way you have to do a dog or a horse. And it was made law. We're constantly asked about our percentage of blood, and I refuse to be reduced to fractions of percentages. My family refuses to be reduced to fractions or percentages. We're constantly asked this all the time, but as my council member and my cousin, Keith Longclaw, so eloquently stated, our primary criteria for identifying lawful tribal citizens who would be able to rejoin with our nation would be lineage, genealogy based, not blood quantum. This requirement is consistent with the overwhelming population of state and federally contracted tribal entities who have chosen a commercial relationship with the current socioeconomic and military entity that identifies itself as the United States. When differentiating between terms bloodline and blood quantum, one should simply refer to the Oxford English Dictionary that describes bloodline as a set of ancestors or a line of descent of a person. This definition coincides with the genealogical methods and not with blood quantum. That is not defined in either the Oxford English or the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Blood quantum is an imposed ideology, part of the genocide pie chart, along with misclassification of race and based on skin color. We are aware that certain powers have tried to erase us, but we refuse to be erased. We are sound in our standing. Under UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Article 3, which states, indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic and social, cultural development. In short, what this is saying, government entities, whether local or federal, and even other tribes, other indigenous tribes, do not have the right to tell any other tribe who they are or who they are not. We're protected under federal laws, under United Nations, and I think I gave an undeniable lineage just a few minutes ago. We're also under the protections of FANA, the Federal Aboriginal Nations of the Americas, who have all taken this same stance in recognition and affirmation. FANA member nations possess a pre-colonial American Indian tribal status, standing, and jurisdiction, whose aboriginality is not subject to recognition from any foreign person, entity, or nation. FANA member nations are the ancestral inhabitants to the lands contemporarily referred to as the Americas. All of us working collectively to develop and implement policies, procedures, initiatives that ensure the public safety, economic and cultural progress, and general well-being for the FANA member nation tribal citizens. Appropriately, each FANA member nation possesses an international and aboriginal status and standing, exists in an aboriginal jurisdiction that is foreign to the U.S., and is entitled Article 3 and treaty rights protections under the Constitution of the United States as pre-colonial American Indian tribes. Now, I'm gonna give you a few different classifications of American Indians. I'm pretty sure you heard of some, but I'm pretty sure there's one that you haven't heard of. One classification is American Indian. That is an individual American Indian who does not reside on a reservation. Next is a state-recognized American Indian. That is an individual American Indian who has established a relationship with the state. Next on the list is a federally recognized American Indian, which is an individual American Indian who has established a relationship with the federal government. Last on this list is a status called Indians Not Taxed, which is an individual American Indian who has, or who is, a national of a sovereign insular area political organization, subject to tribal jurisdiction, treaty provisions, and applicable special federal Indian legislation. That would be us. We're not federal, we're not state, We're not unrecognized. We're recognized in the international community under a status that is not widely known or enforced, but all of the founder member nations are under this particular status. And I want to quote an organization, an international organization we entered into an agreement with through the Federation called SOAD. That stands for the State of African Diaspora. So let me say this, along with SOAD, many other nations decided they wanted to unify, come together, contact us, have conversations, and at the end of the day, we entered in some agreements with organizations in South America, Belize, Africa, Canada, and other international organizations and nations as well. So I want to quote the Prime Minister of SOAD, which is the State of African Diaspora. He said, "In order to obliterate a nation, you do not need to kill every single individual. You just need to infiltrate and implement these mechanisms and then stealthily and systematically eradicate or hide their history, their culture, and their language. Thereby, in 1 or 2 generations, you will achieve a result just as effectively, if not more so, what is called ethnocide. In other words, a genocide without bloodshed, a cultural genocide, a genocide that is soft, clean, and invisible. And as we know, the native people in the Americas were the first victims of genocide and then also victims of ethnocide, which is a way to finish the job, if I may say so. That is why the African diaspora is kith and kin to the Native American Indians globally and all indigenous peoples as a whole. We share the same story. We share the same loss. We share the same traumas, and we share the same pain. We are connected through the destruction and continued destruction of our way of life, communities, and our environments. Or at least that's what our enemies are trying to achieve. But we have a capacity of resilience and resistance that had not been expected, and we are doing more than survival. In fact, we're growing, we're back," end quote. So all of my Cape Fear relatives, all our neighbors here, what does this have to do with ecology? What does this have to do with Gen X and PFAS in our waterways and our land? Well, as a result of our bloodlines being overlooked as if we don't matter, we have become an invisible people and likewise victims to contamination of our food sources and our waterways. We experienced this firsthand on mainstream news as they came to the site of Camurus and interviewed everyone there, including myself, including some other Tuscarora people who are out there, some other indigenous people. And we were all waiting to see the documentary, and it was a great documentary for covering the issues, but it left out a complete demographic of people. Somehow conveniently they cut all of us out. Even something as big as Standing Rock. Standing Rock, all of the nations came together out west, fight the pipelines, with their flags, tents. It looked like a little city out there in the desert, type area, a plains area. And it looked like a city with all those nations that gathered together. The only way, if you weren't there, the only way you would know what was going on is through social media, because Fox and CNN and mainstream media would not cover it. If they said something that was so brief, you missed it. Well, my neighbors, I'm speaking to all the Cape Fear residents at this moment. Our voices are in unison with yours. Together, we are bigger and louder in the fight for clean, toxic-free water. Your voice is our voice, and our voice is yours. And together, none of us will remain invisible. We will be heard around the world, but first and foremost in our state, North Carolina. Yahweh, everyone. Thank you.
I can say so many things about that, but that was on record. That statement, that form of a proper proclamation and history is now on record. Thank you for that, brother.